Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a Latinx writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive. And today we have another guest here for season 2 through Zoom because of social distancing and global pandemics. I always have my guests introduce themselves. So your name, sort of a little bit about who you are and how you identify.
My name is Hello, by the way. My name's not Hello. It's Tamara Yajia, or as in Argentina, they pronounce it Shahia. And I am a writer, comedian, and an actress from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
And you sort of led me into my follow-up. I always ask people where they're from. So whatever that means to you, I know for Latinx folks, that's can be a big question.
I was born in Buenos Aires, but I've been living in the U.S. since I was in 8th grade. I think I was 13. For a while, I felt like I had more of a tie to Argentina. Like I would always say, like that's where I'm from, but now it's changed a lot in the past few years, especially where I feel like I'm more from here. And when I go back there, that's not my home anymore. So there's been kind of a switch.
So let's get into like Buenos Aires. So can you sort of describe, Buenos Aires for someone that's never been there and how it was for you growing up there?
It's a really beautiful city. Compared to other places in Latin America that I've been to, like Brazil or like Colombia, it feels a lot more European. The majority of the population is white. I'm Jewish. There's a very big Jewish population in Buenos Aires. And there's also a really big, a lot of Nazis there as well, which is crazy. A lot of people fled, the war for both reasons. Yeah, I feel like the culture is very like Italian. The way we talk sounds Italian, like it's got that, like sing-songy type of accent. What else about it? Yeah, I haven't been, last time I was there was in 2 years, and it's a really beautiful city. I wish I could go more, but it's 17 hours away from Los Angeles, so that's a kind of a long way.
And I'm curious, I'm always curious about people's parents. So sort of like, who are your parents? What do they do for a living? And just their story, what you know.
Yeah, totally. So I come from, half of my family is from Middle Eastern descent, and then Turkey specifically. And the other half is from like Eastern Europe. So, and I'm 100% Jewish. My parents, when we lived in Argentina, my dad was an architect. And my mom was just kind of stay at home or would help my dad. But my dad never really loved architecture, and the economy was really bad, so he got into textiles, which is kind of like a big, the Jewish population in Buenos Aires, like a big percentage does that. So that's what my grandfather did. We were hit really hard by a recession that happened in the 90s. And my dad lost his business, and we, were down to like $6,000. And we basically moved in with my grandma for a bit. And then they had some friends that lived here in Orange County, which is a suburb of LA, very conservative white town suburb. And they had work for my dad, so we came here with nothing, basically, on a tourist visa that expired.
Similar story with my family.
Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Mexico City, so.
Oh, cool.
So we moved here when I was 3, yes. So
okay.
Similar, just like come on a tourist visa, it expires.
And then, yeah, so when we moved here, my dad started driving a food truck, which is like the job that was his friends had for him. It's a really demanding job. My parents both still do this. They're in their mid-60s. They wake up at like 3 a.m. every day to like drive a truck, fill the food up, and it's not like one of those fancy food trucks. It's the kind that go feed like the construction zones and stuff. And yeah, so they've been doing that ever since we got here. No, they don't even take days off. It's very like immigrant kind of, you know.
And what was like your sense of like being a kid and then coming to the US? Were you like can we get a little bit of the sense of your life in Argentina and then sort of like that change over to America?
Yeah, it was tough because it was disappointing. So in Argentina, up until age 12, I was a kind of a child star. I acted and like was on TV and like did singing and stuff. And so I was really like outgoing and I felt really comfortable in my skin. And I remember when my parents told me we were moving here, at first I was so happy. And I remember two things. One was I'm going to be near Hollywood, which means like in my mind, I was going to go to Hollywood and get discovered. And then the other thing, which is so weird, is I thought that when I arrived in the US, I was going to go to Disneyland and Universal Studios and buy all of like the Mickey Mouse or Flintstones memorabilia and decorate my room like entirely with that stuff. Like such a sweet, pure. So I was like, I wanted to get here. I couldn't wait. Obviously, it was really hard because my entire family, other than my parents and my sisters, stayed. But I don't remember it being difficult until literally the second we got off the plane and we were picked up by my parents' like friends who were the ones that like found them the work. And I sat in their van and they had a daughter my age who I thought like, oh, she's going to be my best friend. She was this like blonde girl. They were also Argentinian. And she ignored me the entire ride. And I swear, everything came crumbling in that second. Like all of this like wide-eyed, you know, it's so weird how like, I always feel like I'm intuitive when it comes to like what's to come, and that was like really reflective of the first 10 years actually.
Yeah, and you know, I'm curious about how you even got into like being a child star in Argentina. Like, was it something your parents encouraged? Were you just naturally like attracted to that?
I wanted it. Like I've always loved to perform since I was a kid. Like my parents, I don't remember this, but they said that when I was like 5, I would stand on the bed and be like, La Gran Tamara is here to perform. And they, you know, they always were like, La Gran Tamara. And I was just like a little shit, you know. And so then I just started these dance classes. And I remember like the teacher was like, you have an amazing voice and you're a great dancer and you're outgoing. And she signed me up to some casting place and I started doing auditions. And do you know the show Nubeluz? They were like, I think they were from Venezuela. So it was these two like shusha, like super hot, like children, like they were older, but they had like a children's show. And when they came to Argentina, like I was on their show. I'll send you a little video of it later. It's really funny. I'm singing I Saw the Sign or All That She Wants from Ace of Base.
Wow. And so, you know, you sort of moved to the US sort of like at a pivotal time, you know, in your adolescence. So I'm always curious about like for high school, like I always ask people like, who were you pretending to be, and how did other people see you?
Oh God, this is painful stuff. So junior high, which is my first, you know, the first school I went to here, was terrible. Like I couldn't shave, my mom didn't let me shave my legs because like it's different. I feel like kids here like grew up a little faster. And I didn't speak English well. Like I remember at lunch walking around in circles, like pretending to look for people so I didn't have to sit by myself with like my smelly lunch. Like I would pretend that I was sick all the time so that I could go home and watch like Barney the dinosaur. And one time I was like, Mom, I don't have friends. So sad. And she was like, well, why don't you talk to your teacher advisor and tell him that? And I went up to him, I was shaking, and I was like, I don't have any friends. And he like creepily like touched my hand and was like, Tamara, like mispronounced my name. I am your friend. And I was so depressed. And this is insane, but cut to 2 years ago, I'm watching the local news, and that literal teacher, mugshots, arrested for making out and touching his students' asses.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, he didn't do that to me, but I was just like, what a thing, like to be so vulnerable around this person that like, so that was the very first year. I know. And then I think high school was hard at first, but I joined the drama club, and I met friends that are still my best friends. So, you know, I was still like, I didn't date anyone. I like didn't have my first kiss till like after high school, I think. And but I made really strong connections with like weirdos like me. So I think it got a little bit better.
Yeah, and you know, you sort of mentioned like that your like tourist visa expired. So like what was the like reality of that? Because I don't think a lot of people like know what that even means really, or what the consequences are, and like, so what was that for your family like?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how long after it expired. I think it was like 9 months or 6 months. And getting in was easy because we were like, you know, a family coming to Disneyland or whatever, even though we had like 1,000 suitcases of stuff. But when it expired, actually shortly before it expired, my parents would apply for the visa lottery, which you're supposed to be outside the country when you apply. I think that's like the best, you know, the fastest way of getting it. But obviously we weren't, and we didn't get it a bunch of times. And finally, I think I was a junior in high school when we got it. It was like, you know, didn't feel what being here undocumented was as much as my parents, because obviously they were like going around with like no driver's license and like stuff like that. But I do remember hearing them and being so scared. As a kid, it doesn't like, at first it didn't mean anything, but my parents are very like almost like buddies with me and my sister, where like we've heard about their money problems since before we even knew what money was, you know. So we grew up very fast in that sense. And what was crazy was when we did get the lottery, we had like a lawyer that had helped us apply and all that shit. And we went to the building in downtown LA the lawyer said basically it's going to be a piece of cake. You walk in, they ask you a few questions, and they just stamp your passport or whatever. And we went in, and we had this asshole who didn't even look at our papers and said, oh no. He was like, this is void. You guys have been here illegally for like all these years. You can't just get the lottery. And it was like just tears, my mom screaming, because that meant we were getting deported basically. So we ran to our lawyer's office, and my parents talked to him, and he was like, absolutely not. So he came back to the INS building with us, and he was like throwing a fit. So they like actually let us in again. And then we had the nicest lady who was like, I'm so sorry. And she like approved it. But I was a kid, that's all so hard. Like I don't talk about it. I think that especially a specific memory like that. And yeah, it turned out well, but like those moments, they stay with you somewhere, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember when we went for our appointment to get our green cards, and again, not a super nice guy.
No.
And he was like, he asked us, well, Ken, my family had grilled us. My dad had grilled us, like, you need to know everything about everyone, like, because my dad got remarried and that's how we got her.
Oh God. Okay. Oh, so right. So they were like questioning the.
Yeah,
Oh.
but again, I think I was at like eighth grade or something. I remember that the man just said like, where does he go to high school? And I answered because again, I had been taught like, you if you mess
Right.
this up, and he was so rude. He was like, not you, I meant her, and I was like, I'm literally a child.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's
Just.
like the worst.
It's those are really traumatizing experiences for a kid. Like just being so scared of authority, and you can tell how it fucks with you to like the day. You know, like I'm so weird around authority. I'm so scared.
It's
You
like a
have
mentality of fear too, coming in as an immigrant to
yes.
like you have to do the rules because you're vulnerable. Like
No, I was just gonna say that like that shapes you too. Like that shapes who you are even to today. It
mhm.
just takes extra work to get back in touch with yourself, you know.
Out of high school, like, did you have a plan of sort of what you wanted to do, pursue?
Ever since I got here, I was very lost. Like I didn't care about school. I barely got by. And straight out of high school, I remember I started smoking pot, and like it helped me start reading, which is like, like I would like help me concentrate, and I would read, and I was like, oh, I love books. Like, oh, there's that creative part inside me, like, kind of came out. And, but my parents, same friends that got them the job, the mother was a interpreter, a Spanish interpreter. And she was like, Tamara needs to do this for a living. And my mom, and she was like, Tamara's going to make so much money doing it. So I took like a class and I passed a certification, and I started translating, which was like a really depressing job. And I was working for doctors who saw like mostly undocumented patients, and they just seeing how awful they were. And I was just really depressed. I did that for like 10 years. And as I was doing that, obviously I did not make the insane amount of money they said I would make. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply for college. And I got a scholarship to study literature at Cal State Long Beach. So yeah, I was doing all those things, but I think with time and meeting the right people that were supportive of me or friends and studying literature, I started to write again. So kind of slowly happened like that.
And so, like, starting college, like, what was your experience of it? Like, because it was sort of like not super traditional. So what was it like for you?
It was weird. It like I was really scared. I remember like basic things of like, where am I gonna park? I just felt like a little kid. Like, I don't know. Like it was hard. And then I started. I actually started as an English major because I had read one book from an English writer that I liked. And then when I took all these classes, I was like, oh my God, no, like I don't want to just study English literature. So I switched to comparative world literature with a minor in Spanish literature. Um, so I think with time I like met great people. I don't know if I wish I could would have studied creative writing, to be honest with you, because there was not working full time and going to school. Like I didn't have enough time to read everything I was required to read. So it just felt like, it's college. I'm glad I went, but it definitely came. What's that expression? To come to your own. Yeah, during college.
And what was your like parents like? How do they feel about that? Because they had sort of gotten you into interpreting. So, like, how do they feel about you wanting to go to college and pursue this like different career?
I think they were proud that I wanted to go to college, but like, I don't think they saw that as a career. In fact, one little thing that I forgot to mention was that just before I started interpreting, I had met someone that got me an internship at Sony, the record label. And I was driving like 2 hours to go from like Orange County to Beverly Hills. And they actually hired me, and I was like the youngest person there. And I felt like this is a good path. I really love doing this. I felt like uplifted. And then the interpreting thing happened, and they were like, no, you're quitting the record label to do this thing that's gonna, and it was depressing. It like deterred me from, I feel like I always have those things in life where it's like I'm reaching something and then get taken out.
And when did you make the move to LA? Like,
I moved to LA with my sister in 2010, and my parents 6 months later sold their like suburban home because they couldn't be far from us. Mind you, far meaning like 45 minutes. And they moved into a loft downtown. Like, just, I think my parents are brave in that sense that they're never tied down. Like, they'll take it's not easy to decide to move your entire family from one country to another. Yeah. So like, they're brave in that sense. But yeah, they came here and they lived like a block away because I live in downtown. And since then, they've moved like 4 times. They've gone to Glendale, and now they're in East LA. They finally bought a little house. We're a very close family.
Yeah, and I'm always curious about that for like, because a lot of like second, third generation like Latinx families have have a lot of community. So like, what was your sense of that coming in? Like, did you have family here? Were you able to like get a sort of a sense of like community?
No family, but my parents made a pretty good big group of friends, most of which are from Argentina. And they're like our family here. So, but it's weird to see. My parents were extremely social people in Argentina. They were like they hosted everything. Everyone always came to our house. And so it's never enough for them here. Like, even though I see it as like from the outside, I'm like, you guys are so lucky. You have a community of Argentinian people like who like you can relate to. You have no language barriers. And to them, they always think they're alone. It's very strange.
And so when did like the writing start coming in for you?
I always journaled. Like, I have a journal that I kept in 8th grade with like getting drunk for the first time and like super detailed stuff. And I've kept it till the date. But when I was interpreting, I was already living in LA. I met a girl who was a director. She's my best friend. She's still a director. And she read one of my diary entries and was like, this is a monologue for like a character. And she was like, what if we put together a one-woman show? And I was like, okay. Like, I hadn't been on stage since, other than like drama club, but I wrote a full play. I got on stage, I memorized an hour worth of material, and I played 4 different characters in that show. So it was basically from not doing anything to like doing this huge thing. We like rented a theater. We had like 2 sold out weekends. And I feel like that gave me so much confidence. Like, it was then that I just like something shifted inside me. It was also having someone that believed in me,
Yeah, it's funny how like stuff like that's like, it's like, well, how did you do that? It's like, well, you just sort of start doing it and you figure it out, and then you're like surprised.
But I wouldn't have done it had my friend Lauren not been like, you're doing this, you're great. Like, I don't think I would have been writing right now. It takes that push from someone that believes in you. It's, at least for me.
Did that sort of give you the confidence to then like pursue like writing like as a career? Like, what was the path for that?
Yeah, well, after that, I wrote a zine like a little book that I put out, and I joined Twitter, and I started tweeting like jokes, but also just like, stream of consciousness stuff. And I built a following there. I was still interpreting, but like it exponentially grows. And through there, a guy once wrote me, this was 3 years ago maybe, from The Onion, Clickhole, and was like, we're huge fans of your writing. Would you like to submit a packet? And I was like, like, this is crazy. Like, the first real thing, like paying. And I got in and I did that for like a year, still interpreting because it was a remote job. Like I was a contributor. And then through that, I got a call from the editor-in-chief of Funny or Die. And I went in for an interview. Like, I remember I couldn't believe it. This was for a full-time writing job. And I was like, I don't write sketch. Like, I don't, like, I wrote this play. And I remember him being like, yeah, it seems like you're more of like a prose type person. He was like, but I really like your social media. You can write, quick, you're like cheap things, basically. Because I feel like a lot of the writers there were like writing sketch, which was expensive and not turning a profit. So I think they needed someone like me. And I got hired. And then I suddenly had a full-time job writing, which, as happy as I was, it was one of the most difficult years of my whole life. And like the most self-destructive years. It's very, very strange how that happened. Like a feeling of I don't deserve this, and insecure every day that I wasn't as good as the rest. I think just a lot of the childhood things bubbled up.
What does it mean to like work at Funny or Die? Like how does, like, like what was a work day like for you, and like the content you were producing?
So I'm still there right now, and it's changed a lot over the years as digital media changes. Like when I got hired, it was like we would do sketch and we would do a lot of stuff with celebrities, and now it's shifted more towards social media, some sketch, a lot of like post driven videos, which is like, I don't know if you've seen like my telenovelas are hell. Which like and I learned how to edit and do like the voiceovers and stuff. So it's stuff like that. It was like a pretty big takeoff point, and I'm still learning so much, doing comedy, but also it's a corporate, like not a corporation, but it's a business. So learning that balance.
Yeah. And like, can you sort of just describe to the audience the sort of content you put on there? Like what is your thing that you like to do there?
I love making telenovelas are hell. I love it because that's my favorite show, and it's actually like one of their best performing shows, which is crazy because I thought no one would watch it. I was like, who's gonna care about Maria la del Barrio, like, And then so yeah, I love doing that. I mean, I basically look through 9 hours of telenovelas and cut it down to 3 minutes. It's so fun. And I've also done some sketch that I like. Like there's one called Me Llamo Alma, which is like it's like a Spanish tutorial, but like I play Alma and I'm like a deranged psychopath. It's weird. Like a lot of the stuff I do is very like Latin oriented. And then I have another series on there called Tam Gets Drunk, which is me getting drunk and watching a movie I've never seen for the first time. It's so fun, but I remember having to go to work so hungover the next day and being like, I have to start faking getting drunk.
Yeah, no, I saw the telenovelas are hell, and it's so funny too because I don't know where else someone's doing something like that, like, because I remember some of these, and I'm just like, I don't know, because I remember watching them as kids. I remember like I could tell you a whole arc of it, but then also you see just memes of some of these things, and you're like,
right?
oh, that's where it's from.
There's so many memes, which I haven't seen all of the ones, but I have seen some, like all the Thalia ones I had seen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's so many memes, especially of, I don't know if you know the villain that knocks over the wheelchair, Soraya
Yeah.
Montenegro. Like, I was like, what is this? It's so insane. It's so fun.
Yeah, and it's like Funny or Die like aware of how like that it's like Latin branded, or because there are like other like meme and like video and stuff that are specific to Latinx culture. So I'm just curious, like, well, how does it fit into like the Funny or Die culture?
It it's very strange. I think that they didn't know what they were getting into when they hired me. I think they were just thought, she writes jokes. And also during the time I was there, I really tapped back into being Hispanic. It was something that I think I don't know. It's not that I like denied it. It was just, I didn't realize it was such a big part of my identity. And so now the stuff that I make is more and more Latin oriented. Like, I'll make a Selena meme for Funny or Die. And it's like, when in the world would that happen? Because I feel like Funny or Die was like Will Ferrell. It's more like, bro-y type things.
Yeah.
And it's like, this just happened. And I think they're happy about it. But also, it's brought out a lot of a different audience for them, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And, because I also saw, the one where you get drunk and watch movies. And I saw the one where you were watching A Never Ending Story.
Right.
And I think that one appealed so much to me because it's like, when you're like an immigrant, some of like the like touchstone childhood movies for some people, you're like, I've never seen it. So like, I think it's perfect to be like, yeah, there's so many out there.
There's so many. And people would be like, why? Like, is it because you're from Argentina that you haven't seen these? And I was like, I think so, because it also had to do with like, for many years while I was here, I was so depressed that as a kid or like a teenager, that I didn't care to watch movies. So I missed those.
Yeah, no, I think it's so true. Because, yeah, like I've never seen like The Goonies or like.
Never seen that.
Never seen E.T.
I've seen E.T.
But I think it was also. But I think like. Because some of my friends are like, what? That's insane. But I'm like, have you guys seen Selena? Have you guys. Like some touchstones for our community, I feel like. So I'm just like, I don't know. Don't devalue like different experiences of viewing.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, yeah, I haven't seen Back to the Future, but I've seen every episode of Laura de América and El Gordo y la Flaca.
Yeah.
So now I'm just proud of that.
Yeah.
I think it's better. I can watch Back to the Future, but I don't know if like my husband who's from here is going to sit and watch Laura de América. I mean, he's not.
Yeah. And it's such an untapped like well of content where it's like, because we're just scratching the surface on like Frida and Selena. Like there's so much more to it.
There's so much. And there's something this is a weird connection I made. I watched, during college, I watched a John Waters movie. I think it was Pink Flamingos. And he became my favorite everything. I have an obsession with him. And then I realized how similar his style is to like telenovelas, or like this crazy, like over the top, almost to where they can do really fucked up shit in their shows and on their in movies and get away with it because of how they build this insane world. Like a grotesque,
I'm just curious about Twitter in general, just because to me it is, just a hellscape. But I'm always curious to the people that like are successful on Twitter, like are comedians on there, like who do very well. So like, can you sort of speak to that experience of like your comedy and how it relates to that app?
Yeah, I mean, it is a hellscape. Now it sucks. Like, I have a hard time logging on now. But I think when I joined, it was a little more fun. Like, there wasn't, we would just tweet jokes. It wasn't like this political feed of people fighting, and it's really heavy now. But back then I started tweeting, and I remember like a girl messaged me. Oh, this girl that like I loved, I was a huge fan, and she like added me, and she sent me a message and was like, I'm in a chat with all of these Twitter comedians. She was like, do you want to join? And like I did, and I met all these amazing people that had day jobs, but like were super creative and funny, and like some of them have now become comedy writers. So yeah, like I built a really amazing community through Twitter, but it's also like I feel weird about it now. Like I'm also doing so much that I don't have the time to just like if I'm gonna think of a joke, I'm gonna do it for like more of a long form thing, or save it for something, you know, that isn't free basically.
And how would you describe your like sense of humor or the comedy you do?
I'm really crass because my parents are very crass, especially my dad. Like I told you earlier, there was never censorship in my house, like, you know, to a point where it was maybe inappropriate. Like like as kids, we were hearing stories about like my parents doing anal, or like my dad shitting his pants. My dad is very scatologic too, so he's always talking about like farting and pooping and like hemorrhoids. So it's all, that's a big part of it, of my humor. But also I've learned with time how to like hone that in, to not, for it to be like a little bit of that is okay, but like what's behind this, you know, like, yeah, if there's a character in the pilot I wrote, there's a character that's super scatologic, but like that's why he's that way, not just a poop or a fart, you know, fart joke. So so that's a big part about it, and of what I write, my comedy, and also just teenage life, and feeling like shit as a teenager in high school or middle school, and not fitting in.
And like, you know, you're up on your diet. Like, I'm curious, like, is there like career aspirations, like places you want to head into?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is definitely to start. I mean, I have a pilot, and I just want to start making my own stuff. Time permitting, you know, because like it's hard. But I wrote this pilot, and that was really helpful because it was the first like, you know, screenplay type thing that I wrote. Now I know how to do that. So I have like a memoir that I'm working on, and then like I'm throwing around some animation ideas. But I think, you know, I have a story to tell the world. So I definitely want to focus on that.
And, you know, how do your parents feel about, like, do they watch your content? What's their opinion on it?
They love it. They, you know, because they shared my sense of humor, but also, you know, my mom's still like the most amazing, like I'm at this point, like I'm writing full time. I have a job. I make money from that. And my mom is still like, well, what does that mean? You know, like, so they have this duality of they're supportive and they love the stuff I do, but they also are like, but you need a real job, you know?
You know, in the diaspora that is Latinx people, I'm always curious about people that like are not sort of in the mainstream, you know? So like you're Jewish, like your family's from Turkey, like it's just like when people think like Latina, right. I don't think they would ever describe you.
No, I know, and that's very weird for me because people think like because I'm white, it feels like I don't get to talk about or like feel like I can tell my immigrant story, which was really difficult. Like I didn't speak English, and I was like bullied, and it was like we were poor. But I think for a while that's why I didn't connect to my Latin identity, was because I felt like I didn't get to, like my story didn't matter because like, you know, I'm perceived as a white girl, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I get in touch, the more I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not that, you know, like the experience I had was very, very difficult. And like the like exactly the immigrant, you know, experience.
Yeah, and it's so curious because I talk to a lot of Latinx folk, and I can tell you most of them are like, I don't think I'm Latinx enough. I don't think I'm doing
Right?
this right. It's like a core thing to our identity to even question like if we fit in.
Why
So
is that, do you think?
I think it might be just like consequences of a colonized people. I think it's just like some sort of, for immigrants, a lot of the Americanization that we feel we had to do to acclimate,
Right.
but it's based in
Right, right,
whiteness.
right.
So anything that's also, I think like the media does a very good job in telling people who they are. And if we see
Mm-hmm.
like three examples of that and we're not expanding the definition of that,
Right.
people don't tend to think they fit into it. But that's why I'm always
100%.
curious how people who like, you know, because I run into people all the time who are just like not what you would think
Right.
when you think of a Latinx person, but like that just means that there's more work to be done in that sense, you know?
Totally. No, for sure. I wonder, to be honest with you, if I started wondering, is my accent, because I have like a tiny accent, but not that big. And I wonder, did I try too hard to have an American accent? Like if I had just kept talking the way, you know, the way I would have, like, would I have a heavier accent right now? Or did I like overcompensate to like, am I me? It's
Yeah.
just like a mind fuck.
Yeah. And it's also like we take all of that really personally when it's like
Right.
half of these things are things that are done onto us that we're just adapting to. So it's like, because I know some people who feel bad they don't even speak Spanish. I'm like, well,
Right.
what's your story? Like, tell me about you, you know?
Yeah, and I had a moment that where I was like, when I started, you know, tapping back in and being like, I've been repressing my like Latin identity, and then I would meet some people that were like, you know, with Hispanic last names that were like, I'm Latina, but like, you know, were born here. Their parents never spoke Spanish to them. And I think I had a moment of like, well, that's not right. You know, like
Mm.
they, you know, they don't have the painful experience. Like they don't get to, and now I'm like, well, we all have our own, but I had to
Yeah.
go through that, you know.
Yeah. And I think we're just starting to get there as a culture. We're all different and that's all right.
Yes. We all
But
have our stories,
yeah.
like
Yeah. But I'm
totally.
always curious because it's like, it's a mind fuck. So,
It's a mind fuck. And then, you know, I think back my friends that I had in high school, you know, they were all white, but they all were from families where there were no boundaries between the parents and the children, and they all had to like very similar things to mine, where like their parents always complained about money, and the kids were kind of raised like adults, and they always took care of their parents. And like I was like, well, that's another thing, you know. And we all gravitated towards each other. So
yeah. You know, sort of to just start wrapping up, I am curious about, you know, the way we got connected was through the Disruptor Fellowship. So I'm just curious of what attracted you to apply to it and what has been your experience so far of it, you know? And what are you looking forward to?
yeah, I mean, God, my manager told me about it. I actually had just gotten a manager, which like to me was like, a what? I have a manager? And everything that happens to me, I'm like, I can never believe that it's happening. So he told me about it, and I was like, I don't know. This isn't like, I don't like, I'm, people see me as a white girl. And then he was like, no, you were raised here undocumented. Like, this is what you write about. And when I got in and I've had a few meetings with them, so much has changed so fast of understanding how I was repressing and how much the world needs all of our stories. And it's just been incredible, and it's just gotten started. But like, I can't, this is what I was telling you earlier, like, I can't wait to read everybody's work. More than like, how will this help me, or how will this, I'm just like happy to meet people that have stories like mine. So it's really fantastic.
And you know, I'm always curious about the writers that my guests admire. So this could be like heroes of yours. This could be peers, friends.
So I think, like, you know, when I was in college, I was a huge Simone de Beauvoir fan. She's a French feminist. She's, now I read back and I'm like, this stuff is a little problematic, but like, she was my favorite back then. I also love Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Cortázar a lot, Argentine writer. And I think with time, then, like, you know, John Waters became like a huge staple for me, and muse. And of people now, I'm obsessed with Julio Torres.
Mm-hmm.
He is like, what he's done of staying true to himself, not being put in any boxes, was super inspiring to see. And also how he like mixes like stand-up with like performance art, with theater and sketch. It's just like really eye-opening. You know, like, you don't have to do the stand-up or the sketch or the, you know, sitcom. It can be so much richer than that.
I asked my guests to help title the episode. The prompt is a blank Latinx writer. So in the blank, you can put more than one word. You can mix them all around. Just what feels true to you, your writing, this conversation.
So a FARTY Latinx writer.
Perfect. Don't think I've had that one before.
Especially during the quarantine. My gas has been so bad that my husband is a saint for putting up with me, but I also put up with his gas. I don't know. It just hits different in the quarantine. It's because we're inside.
Where can people find you? Like, social media plugs, everything.
On Instagram, my name is Tamara Yajia. The last name is, obviously, I think it'll be in the title, but it's Yajia. And then on Twitter, I have the weirdest name. It's Dances with Tamis, which I don't know why it's that. I've never seen Dances with Wolves, but it's based off of that. And I can't change it. So now that's what it is. I think the only thing I just want to say is, like, for people that are listening, I hope this helps as a sort of like a inspiration, motivation. And I just want to say, like, if anybody needs someone to talk to or someone to read their stuff, I'm more than happy to, or just like wants to hear my story or has questions. I don't know. I think it's important to be a mentor the way, or believe in people the way people believed in me. Mm-hmm. That makes a big difference. So hit me up.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, if you like a